It is inevitable as the years pass that the age of those who remember with great fondness the steam, diesel and electric locomotive sheds and works of their youth becomes, well, more advanced. In today's modern railway dominated by multiple units of increasingly homogeneous design, the romance of the past becomes an ever more distant memory. There is, however, one place and one company that keeps the romance alive, yet does so in the most professional and thoroughly modern way. That company is Locomotive Services Ltd. An opportunity to visit LSL at their HQ in Crewe is like winning a golden ticket to see Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So when Green Signals opened up the wrapper to see we'd landed such a ticket, we couldn't wait. Before the tour, we had the opportunity for an exclusive and in-depth interview with Tony Bush, the managing director of this extraordinary company and operation.
Well, I'm here at Crewe in the office of Tony Bush, who describes himself as a general dog's body, but who is in fact the managing director here. And forgive me, Tony, if I sort of lose attention while we're talking, it's because this wonderful office is like a museum in its own right, with Deltic nameplates, and maybe we'll do a few shots around the office later to show some of that.
You will.
But tell us a bit about LSL at Crewe. I knew this as a 12-year-old as the Crewe Diesel Depot when it looked nothing like this. How long you been here, and what are you actually for and to do?
Okay, so I've been here pretty much bang on the nose 7 years.
Okay.
I've known our chairman for just over 10. And I joined the company to help get our train operating company up and running. The chairman, Jeremy Hosking, has been involved in the railways for a couple of decades because he's own steam engines. He used to hire those out to other parties. And he's a massive advocate of the heritage movement, wanted to kind of control his own destiny. So he invested heavily. He bought a company called London and North Western Heritage Railway, which then transferred to the ownership of the Royal Scot Trust. And he started Locomotive Services Ltd, Locomotive Services Stock Limited, to really create a vertically integrated organisation that can not only restore, refurbish heritage assets, but run them on the main line. And that has built and grown over the last sort of 15 years, but accelerated quite heavily over the last 7. That's mostly my fault. But we've now got a very strong business, lots of assets, and a strong commercial tour company that we kind of weld on to the restoration of the heritage assets and the upkeep of the heritage assets to a very, very high level.
So it grew from Jeremy's personal collection through LNWR to the facility you see here at Crewe today. So tell us a bit about the Crewe epicentre of it all, and then maybe a little bit about the wider business. But let's start with what you've got here.
Okay, so this is our headquarters. This is where the train operating company is based. The engineering centre is based. So we plan all of our trains here. We refurbish and rebuild all of our assets here. We maintain our assets here. We've got a satellite location at Southall in West London, and we're building currently a satellite location at Upperby, but the central activities all come from Crewe. So we've got carriage sheds, storage sidings, main workshops, heavy lift facilities. We rebuild our own boilers here. We've got a specific boiler overhaul facility. And then you've got all of these central office and senior management functions here as well.
So in shorthand, this was, many people will remember as I do, as a Crewe Diesel Depot.
Yeah, it was Crewe Diesel Depot. The fabric of the main building is still Crewe Diesel Depot. It's been extensively refurbished and modified to accommodate our particular needs, because obviously we have the widest variety of assets that probably any train operating company has in the country now.
I would think so. I mean, coming on the train yesterday, it was like we were passing Crewe Electric Depot with a whole lineup of electric locos in the sidings there. Just give us a sense of scale of the locomotive fleet that you've got here in terms of diesel, electric and steam.
Yeah, we've got a very wide range of assets. We've got 5 electric locos, an 86 and 87, 2 90s and an 89 now. We've got diesel locos, we've got 47s, 57s, 37s, 20s. We've got a 45, a Deltic, a 40, a 50. Yeah, we're a bit like the Noah's Ark of the railway, really, aren't we? We've kind of got one of each animal. HST power cars, 7 HST power cars. To
all in Midland Pullman livery to support.
All in Midland Pullman to support the 2 Midland Pullman trains.
And you haven't mentioned a steam engine yet.
And we've got the odd steam engine.
Did you say 7 operating?
7 operational steam engines and a couple in the sausage machine to pop out in the next year or so. So yeah, it's not just about building them, it's about maintaining them. So we've got a really strong group of engineers who look after all of the assets for us.
And what sort of headcount have you got here?
Well, we're vertically integrated. Jeremy and I made a decision quite some time ago that we wanted to be in charge of our own destiny. We kind of experimented with the supply chain and that didn't work too well for us. And when you've got 335 passengers on a train, you need to be pretty much sure that the drivers are going to turn up and all your onboard services crew are going to turn up, because they're
And do a good quality job.
And we want our customers to come back. We don't want them to travel with us once and think, "I'll never do that again."
So you actually had occasions where drivers failed to show at the last minute, and
yeah, and it's hugely stressful, and sometimes it's just because the demands of the industry mean that if you're hiring a driver in and the parent company, as driver goes sick, they're obviously going to prioritise their own business, and we couldn't really afford to take that risk.
So you'd fall out at the end and find yourself with no driver.
Yeah, and
wow.
John Humphreys, our head of operations, would find himself kind of, one phone in each ear, trying to ring people to get cover, and it's just hugely stressful. And the passengers don't see any of that because it's the classic swan gliding across the water, But behind the scenes, there's just this huge logistical exercise that goes on to make that train work.
Twice now you've used the expression vertically integrated. Just tell us a bit about that, what it means for, say, the drivers.
Yes, so it's important to us, and the term's important to us because it gives us that control. So we employ all of our own drivers. We employ our own head chef, executive chef, onboard services people, all of our engineers. All of our drivers drive all of our assets.
All of them. So
yeah.
From the 89 to the HSTs to the 86s, the Deltic, the Peak,
yeah,
and then all the steam engines, they're all competent on all those types.
Yeah, and as they come into the business, we generate that competence. So, it takes some time to achieve that full umbrella, but every driver that we employ is, they have the opportunity to learn and expand and drive all of our assets if that's the direction of travel they want to go.
Terrible job, but somebody's got to do it.
Well, yeah, and some of the guys actually, they kind of shy away from the steam engines. They're like, "I'll come and drive your diesels and your electrics for you, and I'll do an HST for you, but I'm not sure about these steam things, So, but gradually, even if they come, they'll route conduct a steam engine, so they generate a competence on the steam engines and get on the footplate and route conduct one of the steam guys if we're going over a short piece of line.
So do you insist that they all drive everything? That is company policy, is it?
It's not company policy it's not a disciplinary offence to not, but everybody's given the opportunity to, and we get a huge take up of that. So, I would say 85% as a minimum of our drivers drive everything.
It sounds one of the most elite links of drivers anywhere.
Well, you've got to be careful saying that because they've all got an ego. They'll all be walking around like Maverick from Top Gun if we're not careful. So.
Ray-Bans.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but they're handpicked. They're all high quality train crew.
And how many drivers are there?
We've got about 11 or 12 full-time guys.
Okay.
And then we've got a number of guys who work sort of part-time.
Bring them in as you need them.
Yeah, and they're really, really valuable members of the team because they give you that kind of support without being top-heavy or fat or overloaded, because ultimately, the intention is that we run this as a commercial operation, and we work very hard on that. So we can't just have reams of people sitting there that don't do anything.
And that vertical integration runs right through the company, does it, through catering? So you do absolutely everything. You butter the rolls and run the catering operation. Everything is done by paid staff. So you have utter control of absolutely everything.
Absolutely everything, which causes my head of compliance, Paul Glaister, some difficulties because our safety management system is comprehensive, and it's probably more comprehensive than most because it's got to cover all of those skill sets, all of those competencies, and all of the compliance that goes with it. So we work really hard on that, from, as you say, the guy who does the planning of the trains, the guys who build the engines, all the way to the person who serves you your cup of tea when you're a passenger on the train is an employee.
So when you sit there having your cup of tea or your clotted cream scone, it's the tiniest tip of an enormous iceberg of activity here.
Very much so, yeah. But it's great because actually everybody can enjoy the whole process. So I'll give you a great example. Ben Roberts, who runs our mechanical team, who was largely responsible for the building of Blue Peter,
Okay.
is a trained fireman. So we've trained him through our competence management system to be a fireman. So actually, he can enjoy the rewards of his efforts in building Blue Peter. He can go out on the network with them. Adriana, who runs our social media side, she quite often goes out and works on a train, so she can get feeling and.
So you got a real team and family spirit around.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really, really important because actually, in the modern world, not so many people see the value of old-fashioned engineering
and team spirit.
So I'm a firm believer, and Jeremy's a firm believer, that you've got to generate that spirit and that culture and that ethic and bring everyone along with you.
So what you've described there, the safety management system, and all that is a massive amount of cost. You did say, you used the word, this is a commercial operation, and clearly has to be. So is this a commercial operation that happens to use steam engines and vintage equipment? Or does it flow from a passion for steam and railways and diesels, and you're executed in a way which is commercial, if you see what I mean? Which is it?
I think it's a fusion of both,
yeah.
Nigel, if I'm being honest. I think you've got to have the passion to do it, but then you've got to have the acumen to make it work commercially. And that, that's a tough blend to find. We work very hard at it. Some of the things that we do are very much based on our chairman's passion for railways. Very difficult to write a business case to overhaul an A2 Pacific. But on the other hand, when we're running trains and we're running the tour companies, they have to run as commercial entities because it's impossible not to, really, because you lose sight of
money pit otherwise.
What it is you're trying to achieve. And actually, as you rightly say, money just drains down. It just runs down the drain, doesn't it? So.
But a lot of it is, listen, that stems from Jeremy's passion for the railway, and that comes from a boyhood interest like the rest of us, I guess.
Very much so, yeah. He's a reserve man. He's a very passionate man. I class him as a very close friend, as much as a chairman. And we work very, very hard to do the things that we do. Jeremy is not only passionate about the railways, but he's in a position to try and help. And I think we see ourselves as people who are currently the proud custodians of some of these assets, and we're really here to try and make sure that they remain available for the next generation and for future generations to see.
But he clearly has a desire, it can't be coincidence, not to be seen as a sort of public leader of the operation in the way that, say, Richard Branson always did with Virgin. Richard was very much a sort of figurehead. Jeremy doesn't believe in that sort of approach.
Not so much. He's certainly not, overt like someone like Richard would be, but he came along to the launch of Blue Peter and he did the name, and we all had a really, really great day. So as I say, I'm very fortunate in that he lets me do my job. I've been working on the railway for 30 years, and he allows me to run the organisation, and then I allow the team to express themselves.
So you mentioned before you'll I don't think you used the word indulge the chairman's passions, but definitely keep your radar pinging and think, oh, he's interested in that, we'll do some of that.
Yeah, very much so.
If he drops a hint, you pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, we're currently working on Nunney Castle. Jeremy's hugely fond of that locomotive.
Okay.
So we're working incredibly hard to rebuild it and get it up to the absolute tip-top standard. He was very passionate about bringing the A2 back. And I think unless he'd been as passionate about bringing the A2 back, it wouldn't have come back. It'd have been stuck in a museum somewhere.
Too expensive,
which would have been a crying shame for the movement. Really.
So everything's got the same importance commercially to you. The steam engines, the Blue Pullman, the whole lot has equal weight.
Yeah, as much as even the train operating company. I don't like us to be referred to as a charter train operating company. We're just a train operating company. We're a TOC. We've got probably in a lot of cases a more complicated, management system, asset arrangements than many other TOCs. So I just want us to be seen as a professional train operating company, a professional organisation that delivers a high quality of service. The charter kind of label, I think, is a historic label that isn't really relevant on the modern railway.
No, I get the point.
We want to be treated just the same as any other.
And I guess it's a statement of blindingly obvious in that the Blue Pullman must have been a huge success for you to have done the short version that's appeared recently.
Yeah, I think it was, and I say this quite often, I think it was just the right train at the right time.
Yeah.
And again, it was an organic process. I'd always fancied running an HST because I was born in the 70s, so HSTs were around when I was, when I was a certain age. And when PRM TSI came in, obviously they were cascaded out. So, Jeremy and I had a long conversation about where we were taking the business, and he said, well, let's buy a set and see where it goes. And he said, actually, I used to love the old blue Pullman,
So that was one of the hints you picked up on.
And that's literally how it just organically evolved. It organically evolved.
It wasn't part of a grand plan or anything.
No. And then our engineering director, Jonathan Rawlinson, who always picks up we've had a great idea from Jeremy and I, was, thinking about buying an HST, John. And Jeremy really, do you think you could recreate? So that's where it came from.
So does his heart sink when you tell him Jeremy and I have been talking?
No, he's all right. He's used to it now.
All right. So you're going to base the 5 set up there at Fort William.
It's going to run from the south. It's doing long haul. So
is it? Okay.
From time to time.
But you've got servicing facilities up there.
Yeah, we've got servicing facilities.
And you've got the presence at the SRPS at Bonus now. I mean, we did mention this to you before. Have you got aspirations to do a lot more in Scotland, not least on the West Island line?
Same answer as last time, really. We want to move into some Anglo-Scottish operations, particularly with steam. We don't think that there's enough steam that goes Anglo-Scot across the border. That's one of the reasons we acquired Upperby.
Okay.
Our aspirations in the far north are probably not as high as people might think or want us to be, because it's a massive undertaking to go north. And our friends at Carnforth have got a business up there, and we're not particularly interested in kind of replicating that.
Might change.
Who knows what the future's going to bring.
So you'd be ready to move should that opportunity present itself?
We'd struggle. To operate in the far north is very, 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 very resource hungry. I don't think people realise how much resources and capability you need to reach that far north. We want to run trains West Coast, East Coast, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Inverness, Aberdeen. We want to take the A2 to Aberdeen.
I would suggest that the sort of resource, determination and ability that built this place would manage.
Everything's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you've got the will, the determination and, the resources, you can achieve it. But as well as I do, you've been around long enough. Achieving things on the railway, there's always a gestation period, and it's incredibly difficult.
So what next? What's the next chapter for this organisation? Is it just developing more of the same, or are there some new big steps forward that you've got? With the HST and the Blue Pullman was probably the last. Oh wow, that's a new development. What you got next?
Our next challenge is to stabilise. We've been in what a lot of people called hypergrowth. We've turned from not doing very much to doing a hell of a lot in a short period of time. Our turnover figures are pretty, significant in terms of the uptick. The key really is for us to sustain what we've achieved and not allow our service quality to deteriorate because we're running more trains. So we're looking at a real kind of consolidation piece, making sure that we get everything right, make sure that we keep all of our systems right. We've got big challenges around, bringing people into the organisation to keep sustaining what we've got. Maintaining 7 operational steam engines is a massive undertaking. So we've got strong apprentice training programs.
Maintaining one is a massive undertaking.
Absolutely, yeah. And the team that look after them are a fairly young team. We're trying to generate that youth. We're trying to bring new people into.
Well, that's a good point, isn't it? I mean, because a lot of railways over the years have relied on old timers who want to keep going. Obviously, you can't do that forever. We're past the point at which that's realistic for a growing company. Are you managing to bring in sort of young apprentices, engineers to become boiler smiths? And
very much so. Very much so. There's a lot of youngsters out there that enjoy the heritage scene. Traction engines, steamrollers, and you'll find a lot of the people that work here have that passion and do that when they're not working.
And are they local? This being a Crewe railway town, or are you getting people moving in from further afield?
Both. A lot of the team here are local people, but we also get people who we help relocate.
So have you got people here whose fathers and grandfathers were in the works doing various railway engineering jobs?
Yeah, quite a lot of it kind of seems to run in the family. We invite some of the engineers from other companies to come in. Got great relationship with people in Vanti and other TOCs, and it's really good. Sometimes they bring the Alstom engineers in here, and it's like, oh, I can't plug a laptop into that. And that's really quite interesting because it's a good development tool for them to see that these these old skills are still alive and well, and we're trying to really promote that.
So have you got your eye on any sort of locomotives haven't heard about yet, or new carriage sets, or anything that we should be keeping an eye out for?
I think we could become a bit boring over the next couple of years, just while we're consolidating and make sure we're on top of everything. We've got a backlog of steam engines that we need to bring back into service. We've got Mark 1 still going through the workshop, Mark 2 overhaul programs going through the workshop. As I say, it's as much, there's a lot of horsepower required just to maintain what you've got, as much as keep growing.
And this isn't a depot anymore, is it? It is a fully fledged works, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Blue Peter that's packed outside the door was built from basically 2 pieces of steel here. The original mainframes are still there, but that locomotive it didn't have a 10-year overhaul. It was comprehensively reconstructed here using the staff that we've upskilled here, the team that we built here, and now we're going to operate it ourselves using our own drivers. So that's a perfect example of kind of the little ecosystem we're trying to build for ourselves.
Just picking up your last comment, I don't think anything that LSL is going to do could ever be regarded as boring. So please carry on doing what you're doing. Thanks ever so much for your time. We appreciate you welcoming green signals into your home here this morning. Hope we don't get too much in the way. Looking forward to our tour, and I'm sure we'll see things which will surprise us. But certainly before we leave, I do want to have a quick look round this office, because there's some wonderful bits. It's like a museum in its own right.
You're very welcome, and I hope you enjoy the tour.
Absolutely, and very much thanks for your time.
No problem. Nice to see you again.
As soon as we stepped out into the first shed, Tony's Noah's Ark comment becomes immediately apparent. Resplendent in the glorious BR blue of the steam era, Class A2 Pacific 60532 Blue Peter, recently the subject of a multi-million-pound rebuild and restoration, looks magnificent. It is just one of a series of locomotives in the shed, each iconic and each much loved in its own way. The story of LSL begins with the Royal Scot Locomotive and General Trust, a non-profit charitable trust set up by Jeremy Hosking to protect and restore assets of historic railway importance. The Trust owns a number of steam engines such as 60532 Blue Peter, 46100 Royal Scot, 70,000 Britannia, as well as diesel locomotives such as Deltic D9000, the Peak 45118, and other historic assets. The Trust also actively promotes and engages in mutually beneficial relationships with other like-minded organisations such as the Sir Nigel Gresley Locomotive Trust.
So Tony, you said we'd have a few surprises when we walk around the depot, and here's the big one for me. I did not know you had the Brighton Belle here.
Yeah, we've got a relationship with the 5 Belle Trust, and we've entered into a long-term lease agreement to use the Brighton Belle, and as part of that we have effectively re-engineered the train and done all the quality assurance final paperwork on the train. So once all that's complete, we'll take it out on test with the anticipation that within the next 12 months it'll start commercial services in the southern region.
So it will be running as an electric train, not as drawn carriages?
Correct, yeah. Fully operational.
All 4 carriages?
4 carriages.
That is going to attract a lot of media attention in it, because when the Brighton Belle was withdrawn, it was used by a lot of acting and media people, wasn't it? And it attracted a heck of a lot of attention.
Yeah, well, we hope so. It's been well over 10 years in the making. The 5 Belle trustees have put a lot of time and effort in, and over the last 3 or 4 years, we've put an incredible amount of time and effort into getting it able and ready and compliant to operate on the main line.
So something really to look forward to.
Definitely.
There must have been a whole load of very special problems with that, because it's
very much
an EMU get out on the main line.
Yeah, and you've got a fusion there of some quite modern equipment, like for like replacing some quite old equipment. So we're bringing kind of 2 eras
like
together.
Control gear and
Control
that sort
gear
of thing
and
for the motors.
Even TPWS4 and GSMR, new data recorders, and you're trying to integrate that into some of this old equipment.
An old Pullman.
Yeah.
Pullman. So, I mean, that's just one highlight in this shed. Just give us a quick rundown, say if we work from over here on the right, a Great Western tender.
This is our King,
Yeah.
KE1. Again, we're doing some quality assurance work before that re-enters service, hopefully in the next sort of 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
The King will come back. Then we've got one of our Class 47s that's on an engine transplant. We're transplanting an engine into that locomotive, and bodywork overhaul, bogie overhaul, and then a repaint. We've got a Class 90 bogie here that we've acquired to cannibalise for spares, because we do quite a lot of that as well with old kit.
And then the castle over here, yeah?
This is Nunney Castle, on a full reconstruction. We're hoping to have, well, we're planning to have Nunney back in one piece around Christmas, New Year time.
I think the chairman's got a soft spot for that, hasn't he?
He certainly does. Yeah, Nunney's one of his favourite locomotives. So we're really everyone's really pushing the boat out to get it rebuilt as fast as we can. So Nunney Castle is stripped down to its absolute component form.
And you put all the bits over here and clean them and
Re-engineer where it needs to be, re-qualify, replace as required.
And you've got everything. You've got steam pipes and piston covers and cylinder covers. And
everything's here. It's just a big jigsaw puzzle to put back together now. We've done, bizarrely, it looks like it's still in a million pieces, but we've really done the hard work because we've stripped it, we've re-qualified, re-engineered, replaced. We now just need to rebuild.
You reach that point where it stops looking worse with everything you do and it starts getting tidier, and
you get to the
as
bottom
bits
of the rabbit
go,
hole
yes,
and start coming out again.
as bits go on.
All three 6-foot 6-inch driving wheel sets are ready. The blue on the axles indicates that new axle box bearings are being precisely fitted to the journals.
So you're cutting new pads, yeah?
Yeah, they're the felt, so
Yeah.
for the horns. Obviously.
Yeah.
I've done a set for the actual faces as well. Yeah. It's a bit of a funny design. You've got like a wick, a lamp oil wick. So all the oil's in the
So
top.
that's the reservoir there.
That's the reservoir there.
I
Yeah.
want it to, that's for the,
That's for the two faces.
yeah, but the wick, that wick
Yeah,
goes
that's
in
the
there.
old one. Yeah, so we've got some new stuff there. Yeah. So basically, that's cut through there and folded through, stapled.
So your felt fits in there, and then the oil feeds into the
simple as that.
into the pad.
And that's what gives the white metal face or something. It's funny because it also feeds the thrust face. So it's a bit of a long way round for the oil. But,
And did you scrape all these in by hand since it's blued?
yeah, these have been scraped. There's one where we had to redo the thrust face. It was remetalled and machined. But the others, they've all just been re-scraped by hand.
All 6 heavy driving wheel axle boxes are repeatedly trial fitted on the journal on which they must fit perfectly to ensure an unbroken oil film.
You get a hand scraper and gently scrape away at it, and you keep doing that until you've
So
no
basically, you don't put any blue in the box. You put the blue on the axle. You sit the box on and you rotate the box around.
Yeah, move it round.
And where the blue transfers from the axle to the box, that tells you where the high spot
The
is.
high spot is. So then a highly skilled man with a little, because it's only soft, is that stuff. So he's going to take that round now and drop it on the axle. So it's a bit tricky one, this is, because you're right, that's a right leading box and we've got it as a right trailing. So it's not the same, doing the same job at all.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how the works operated, you know. A loco would go in and they would have a production line. So
Next boiler. That's why, you know, people will smile when they say that's 100 years old, is that? Well, might be. The frames might be, you know, but
yeah.
And a boiler might be on half a dozen different engines during its life, and a tender could be with 10 different engines.
Correct. So there are a number of parts on Britannia, for example, that are off a 9F because they share a lot of
standards, yeah.
Standard class. So so that's quite common to see.
But I find that archaeology thing really fascinating. I always meant to do a feature and didn't actually do it in Steam World. So you take a picture of a box like that with all the different numbers on it and then find pictures of all those engines and Nunney Castle and say, well, look, this axle box was on all these different engines.
So now he'll put it back on the bench, he'll see the blue on the axle box and he'll be able to hand scrape that.
Because it's important, it absolutely fits.
Because all that relies on is a film of oil to protect it.
Of a micro whatever it is, and the slightest high spot can break the film and the engine then runs on. So we've just come through there. That wall is new, isn't it? That wasn't here when this was a diesel depot.
Correct. That wall was put in place to provide a level of segregation between the running side of the shed and the real workshop side of the shed.
Keep your running engines cleaner as well, doesn't it?
Well, we hope so. And also it allows, you know, from a safety protection system, Obviously, we've got locos moving in and out all the time there, so we've
Right.
got one type of safety protection system,
And different.
and then different in here, because quite often a loco and asset won't move for them at
So,
once.
is there anything you can't do here engineering-wise, or are you totally self-sufficient now? To rebuild a steam locomotive from ground up, can you do everything? The boiler work, the tyres, the wheels, the axle boxes?
Sweating tyres on is the only thing we can't do. We don't have a heat ring here, so we work with the South Devon Railway engineering team, and they put tyres on wheels for us. But everything else we do ourselves.
Absolutely everything. So you are a completely self-sufficient works now.
Correct. You know, you're asking about Blue Peter at Durham. That's one of
Oh,
Blue
right.
Peter's rods from Durham at the back.
Oh Christ, look at that.
So that's testament to what can happen if you get it wrong, and it shows how skilled steam drivers are, and it doesn't matter what company you are, it doesn't matter who you work for.
And you're always a heartbeat away from it.
Exactly, yeah. So that's not a company thing. It's absolute respect for every driver who takes a steam engine out on the network.
Locomotive Services Ltd is a long-standing private company that owns and operates a number of railway assets. They include steam and diesel locomotives, for example, A4 Pacific 60019 Bitton. LSL operates from here, Crewe Diesel Depot, and also its Southall facility, as well as other satellite operations. They lease in assets as required, such as Class 40 number 40013, also on shed when we visited. These tend to be via long-term agreements rather than short-term hires. Its sister company, Locomotive Services Ltd, is a fully fledged train operating company with the various licenses required to operate train charter services and rail tours. It is a licensed undertaking that contracts with a number of organisations to plan and operate charter trains and other services across the country. These include the much-loved brands Saphos Trains, Statesman, InterCity, Steam Dreams, and of course, the Midland Pullman. The range of tours and operations is immense, with everything from tours for diesel electric locomotive enthusiasts through to luxury steam-hauled land cruises that rival the very best luxury train experiences in the world.
Right, well, we're here on Four Road, or what was the Crewe Diesel Depot, and I'm with Rob, who's got an amazingly complex technical job to do. If you could just start and tell us who you are and what your job title is and what you're doing, Rob.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So my name's Rob Fenner. I'm the ETCS project manager for Locomotive Services. So at the minute we're in charge of fitting the latest technology to some of the oldest technology. So we're fitting the Deltic with ETCS, so it can run on the East Coast Main Line from April 27 onwards with the new signalling system.
So that's a 1955 vintage design,
Yes.
being brought right up to full 21st
Absolutely,
century
eh?
standards. So what sort of difficulties have you come across in fitting it? Because it wasn't exactly designed with the idea that it's going to go on.
No, it was not, no.
So have you had a
We found that
difficulty
out.
finding places to put it?
Yeah, it's been quite a challenge, to be honest with you. I mean, the design has been maturing for about 2 years now, going on for 2 years. This has been in the pipeline for. So obviously within that we've got electrical drawings, schematics, pneumatic drawings for all the braking system and all the pipework, mechanical drawings for all the fixings, bracketry, everything else where all that's going to go, torque values, torque settings. So we've had to, what we've just finished is fitting a new fuel tank underneath, because the ETCS system needs a Belize antenna to read all the messages from the radio block centre. It sends all the messages via an antenna in the track, so then the loco picks that up through its Belize, and then it tells the loco what it needs to do, what speed it needs to do, what's coming up ahead. So because we've had to fit that underneath, we've had to shorten the inboard fuel tank. So we've had a brand new tank manufactured
To make space for
to make
it.
space for this kit, yeah. And then on that fuel tank we've got a cable run that runs along the fuel tank and then onto we call it the ETCS raft, is where the Belize and the radar is, and the radar basically tells the loco what speed it's doing.
So it'd be wrong to think it's a couple of Belize's and a bit of a display
Yeah,
in the cab.
yeah, unfortunately. We would like it to be that way. But so yeah, I mean that's underneath. Obviously we've had to fit external OPGs, which are generators for the speed. So the ETCS system needs a digital input for the speed, and obviously with this being such a vintage loco, it's got to be an analog input at first from the axle end, speed, and then that's converted into a digital speed into the cab for the driver.
So there's miles of cabling, pipe work,
Oh yes,
plumbing.
yeah. There's a good 2 miles or so. Yeah, you can see it dangling down from the left-hand buffer beam there. Yeah, there's around 2.5 miles of cabling that have gone into it.
2.5 miles of
Yeah,
cabling.
yeah. It's a lot of cabling.
So what
yeah.
stage are you at? Are you getting sort of towards the stage where you might be pressing an on button, or?
We're currently about 6 weeks away from it being finished.
Oh right.
And that's when the testing phase begins. Yeah, and that's when we find out if everything works.
I'm going to say, is that fun or frustrating? But probably
Well,
both.
it could be a bit of both. Yeah, I imagine it's going to be quite frustrating at first because this is what we call the first in class.
Yeah.
So this is the first heritage diesel locomotive to be fitted with ETCS in the country, or indeed the world, of this sort of age. So obviously there's going to be teething problems. We're expecting teething problems.
Of course you will.
But yeah, so in 6 weeks' time we'll get to power it up for the first time, run the engines, make sure everything's functioning on the loco.
That's going to be a moment, isn't it? That
It will
refreshing
be.
Powering it up for the first time.
It'll be a big
Watching
moment,
all the
yeah.
screens come to life. And
Oh yes, yeah, it's going to be a big moment. I mean, the A1 Trust, obviously they've been through the same with Tornado. And they've got obviously niggling issues, and we're expecting the same sort of thing. But hopefully, you know, we'll get it sorted as soon as we can, and then we're looking at next year going testing on the Cambrian with it. It's definitely dragging it into the 21st century, that's for sure. So yeah, we just fitted the roof antennas. They went on yesterday for receiving. So we've got, obviously, locos have got GSMR fitted today. We've got to fit GSMR data to this one. So obviously the GSMR will receive data input as well as the usual calls and text messages from the signaller.
I mean, just listening to you speak there with the rhubarb soup of acronyms and things, it is an incredibly technically complex operation, isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah. So I've got a document in my office that's 12 pages full of acronyms.
Okay, well, look, well done. Thanks for taking a break for a minute.
That's okay.
To talk to Green Signals, and we should. I live at Tallington on the East Coast Main Line.
Oh right, well we'll let you know when it's past then.
I shall look forward to walking round to the crossing and
definitely, yeah. We'll let you know when it's out.
Watching you go thrumming by.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. You'll be more than welcome to come and have a look.
I'd love that. That'd be really good. But thanks for your time
No
tonight.
problem at all. No problem.
Excellent.
LSL's boiler shop adds considerably to Crewe's engineering self-sufficiency. The high roof of the boiler shop enables boilers to be lifted on end and also invert them, making work inside fireboxes much more straightforward. All aspects of boiler work can be tackled here, not only repairs, but also new construction. New steel lower firebox sides are being fitted to Nunney Castle's inverted standard number 8 Swindon boiler. The Castle's copper firebox is secured within the steel wrapper by 967 steel and 611 copper stays, plus 276 roof stays. This creates a cavity wall of water around the fire. A new double-headed steel stay is screwed through the steel wrapper, then the plain, narrower section of the stay is pushed across the water space before screwing the other end into the perfectly aligned and drilled copper firebox within. The outer end of the stay will be corked by squeezing the steel plate tightly onto its thread, whilst on the inside, a sacrificial steel stay nut will be fitted to protect the stay thread. Exposed to the scouring effect of the fire, these nuts eventually burn away and must be carefully chiselled off and replaced. That firebox water jacket is crucial. The fire reaches temperatures of up to 1,300 degrees centigrade, way above the 1,084 degrees C melting point of the copper. The firebox does not melt, creating a boiler explosion, because water is a superb conductor. So the violently boiling water circulating powerfully around the firebox conducts enough heat away to keep the firebox copper safely below its melting point. The water cavity wall is revealed here by removal of the damaged lower edge of the steel wrapper on this inverted BR standard 9F boiler from 92212. A new rolled steel barrel section has been fitted to the boiler, onto which the new smoke box will be fitted in due course. Note the new copper heads on the diagonal row of renewed rivets. This is all very highly skilled manual work. As in every area of steam engineering, what seems like miles and miles of workshop racking are needed for tools and other components, together with fittings removed from locomotives for refurbishing during overhaul, plus, of course, heavy machine tools. As we come to the end of our tour and visit, we have a glimpse of Jeremy Hosking's personal train. Like his company's, it is a wonderful blend of modern and heritage, a symbiosis of technology and romance. What a wonderful expression of one man's personal passion and enthusiasm. Jeremy Hosking may well be a reserved and private man, but his contribution to the heritage railway movement is immense, arguably incalculable. The business that Jeremy and Tony have created is remarkable. The scale of the operation, quite extraordinary. To deliver this has taken a great deal of resource, and there's no doubt that Jeremy Hosking is a man with access to considerable resources. But that is not enough on its own. You need a team of people with vision, desire and commitment. And they are here in abundance at LSL. Everyone we met during our visit had a smile on their face, offered a cheery hello as we passed, and clearly loved their job. Although you'd have to be rather strange to not love working here. Noah's Ark it may well be, but Noah's Ark had a purpose: to save all the species of the world, to enable a bright and glorious future. That is what LSL are doing. And they're doing it superbly, with an equal blend of passion and professionalism. There can be no greater legacy.